Hello, you're watching A News. I'm Bakhtiar Sanov, and let's see the top stories. Russian attacks on Ukraine's Kiev kill at least 3, set fire to main government building. Norwegians head to the polls on Sunday to elect a new parliament in tightly fought election. And Israel tells Palestinians in Gaza City to move south amid ongoing strikes. Ukraine has been shaken by one of the most destructive nights since the war began, with heavy strikes hitting multiple cities. Russia's record attack also struck at the heart of Kiev's government, which is for the first time. The attack has raised fears of further escalation as Ukraine urges allies to act.
Russia has carried out its largest overnight air attack of the war, killing 3 people in Kiev, including a child, and injuring 18 others. Fires broke out across the capital after waves of drones and missiles struck, hitting homes and even Ukraine's government headquarters. Kiev Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said the attack began with drones raining down, followed by missile strikes. The government building in the city centre caught fire, marking the first time it has been directly damaged since the war began.
Yet another attack. The 2 city districts of Darnitsky and Sviatoshinsky have suffered the most. We are now in the Sviatoshinsky district, where a Shahed drone hit a residential building.
Emergency officials reported widespread destruction in residential areas. In the western district of Sviatoshinsky, several floors of a 9-story building were torn apart. Drone debris triggered blazes in a 16-story block and 2 other 9-story buildings. Ukraine's Air Force said Russia launched 805 drones and 13 missiles overnight. Defense units intercepted most of them, shooting down 751 drones and 4 missiles. Still, the attack was the largest drone assault since Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022. The attack stretched far beyond Kiev. Dozens of explosions rocked Kremenchuk, cutting power and damaging a bridge over the Dnipro River. In Kryvyi Rih, Russian strikes hit transport and urban infrastructure. In Odessa, apartment buildings and civilian facilities were damaged, with fires breaking out across several neighborhoods. Meanwhile, Poland said it scrambled its own and allied aircraft to ensure air safety, as western Ukraine also faced the threat of attack. Moscow has not commented on the strikes. Russia's defense ministry also claimed its forces downed 69 Ukrainian drones overnight. Ukraine, in turn, said it struck the Druzhba oil pipeline in Russia's Bryansk region, causing serious damage. Officials in Kiev said such strikes on energy targets are aimed at undermining Russia's ability to wage war. The escalation comes as President Vladimir Putin rejected Western proposals to send an international reassurance force to Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire. He warned that any foreign troops deployed would be treated as legitimate targets. Foreign Minister of Ukraine Andriy Sybiha urged allies to act, saying Moscow was escalating its terror.
Norwegians are heading to the polls in a tightly contested election between a Labour-led left-wing bloc and a right-wing dominated by the Progress Party and Conservatives. Recent polls put Labour in the lead with 26.5% of the vote.
Norwegians head to the polls on Sunday and Monday to elect a new parliament. The tight race will decide whether to continue with a Labour-led government or shift to the centre-right. Key issues include the cost of living, taxation and public services, with the outcome potentially affecting Europe's energy and power supplies, as well as the management of Norway's $2 trillion sovereign wealth fund.
So it looks to me like the economy is really the top issue for voters in this election. So we've had inflation in Norway, the cost of living is an issue for many voters, so that's probably a top issue. But in addition to that, international affairs, the sort of uncertain situation internationally, both in terms of trade and also in terms of the war in Ukraine and security policy, is something that has been a big part of the debate here in Norway.
Prospective voters have echoed these concerns, with some aiming to preserve Norway's values through their vote.
The most important thing for me when I vote is it's tax, an efficient tax scheme. It's EU politics. I want to try to preserve Norwegian important values and issues. It's immigration. Try to have a sustainable immigration politic. I think that's the top issues. Yeah.
In this election, the main issues for me are the wars, the war in Gaza, and the war in Ukraine, and also the climate changes. That's what I'm going to look for when I vote.
Russia's war in Ukraine have been particular sources of anxiety in Norway, a nation of 5.6 million people with an export-oriented economy and a shared border with Russia in the Arctic. Opinion polls this month have Labour winning about 26.5% of the vote, which would make it the largest party. Given how tight the race is, the final outcome could hinge on the performance of 5 smaller parties: the Greens, the Socialist Left, and the Communists on the left, and the Liberals and Christian Democrats on the right. There are 4 million eligible voters in this founding member of NATO, which is part of the EU's single market but not a member state.
Once again, France's government faces the threat of collapse after Prime Minister François Bayrou announced that a no-confidence vote will be held during a session of the National Assembly on Monday, 8th of September.
France is on the brink of a political crisis. Prime Minister François Bayrou has announced a confidence vote in the National Assembly on the 8th of September. If he fails, his government will be forced to resign. The vote comes after Bayrou unveiled an unpopular budget, including 43.8 billion euros in savings through cuts to public sector hiring, suspending pension indexation, scrapping 2 public holidays, and potentially higher taxes on high earners. Analysts say the move is a gamble to force opposition parties to negotiate, but it's unlikely to succeed.
So the Prime Minister called the confidence vote really is a gamble. So he has proposed a budget that is going to cut a great deal of money and also remove 2 public holidays. It's a very unpopular budget. And he knew that in proposing this budget, he was going to get a no confidence vote anyway. So his gamble was to essentially call a confidence vote so he could try to see if he could force the other actors in the opposition parties to negotiate with him.
President Macron has publicly expressed support for Bayrou, backing him through the confidence vote. However, Bayrou's centrist coalition lacks a parliamentary majority, forcing him to rely on opposition support or abstentions. But far-left Rebellious France, far-right National Rally, and other parties have pledged to oppose him. Rebellious France plans to file an impeachment motion against Macron on the 23rd of September, while National Rally and some centrist leaders demand the president's resignation or snap elections. The stakes are high. If Bayrou fails, his government will be forced to resign, leaving Macron to appoint a new prime minister for the 3rd time in a year and confront the reality of a fractured parliament. Analysts warn that even with a new premier, political gridlock is likely to continue. France faces a major debt challenge, with national debt at 114% of GDP and no budget surplus in over 50 years. Finance Minister Eric Lombard has cautioned that without controlling debt, interventions from the International Monetary Fund, rare for a developed country, could become necessary. Financial markets reacted quickly to Bayrou's announcement. Recently, interest rates on France's 10-year bonds rose to 3.5%, surpassing even debt-riddled Greece. Observers say this confidence vote is about more than just Bayrou's survival. It is about the future direction of France. The government's lack of a parliamentary majority means it must rely on opposition support or abstentions, which seems unlikely. analysts predict a defeat could trigger further calls for legislative elections. But Macron may be cautious to take that step. As France approaches the 8th of September vote, uncertainty reigns. A deeply unpopular government, an unpopular budget, rising protests, and a president publicly supporting the embattled prime minister. The coming days could reshape the political landscape entirely.
The European Union has fined Google nearly €3 billion over anti-competitive practices in digital advertising. The company now has 60 days to end the conduct or face tougher remedies.
The European Commission has imposed a €2.95 billion penalty on Google, accusing the company of abusing its dominance in the online advertising technology sector. Regulators say the conduct distorted Europe's digital advertising market since 2014, forcing publishers and advertisers to rely on Google's systems. Google now has 60 days to present a plan to end these practices, while regulators continue to weigh stronger remedies, including a potential breakup of some services. The tech giant has rejected the ruling, calling it unjustified, and announced plans to appeal. Executives warned the changes could hurt thousands of European businesses that depend on online advertising revenues. This is the fourth major antitrust case Google has faced in Brussels in under a decade, adding to previous multi-billion euro penalties. But the timing of the fine is politically sensitive. Brussels initially delayed the fine out of concern it could disrupt a fragile EU-US trade deal, which still faces hurdles over tariffs on European cars. In Washington, President Donald Trump denounced the decision, describing it as part of a broader campaign against American tech companies.
We're upset with the European Union because of what's happening with not just Google, but with all of our big companies. They just, hit them with these unbelievable fines, $17 billion and $14 billion. And they use that money to run Europe. It's almost become like common. It's almost become a yearly occurrence, like it's a tax.
He pointed to past actions against Apple and Google, claiming the fines amounted to tens of billions of dollars and signaled a broader pattern against US companies. Trump warned that Washington should respond in kind if European regulators continue this approach.
US President Donald Trump has criticized India for purchasing large amounts of oil from Russia, calling the move very disappointing. Speaking from the Oval Office, Trump confirmed his administration had imposed a 50% tariff on Indian goods in response. He voiced clear disapproval of New Delhi's energy ties with Moscow, but insisted the United States and India still share a special relationship despite what he called occasional moments of disagreement.
I've been very disappointed that India would be buying so much oil, as you know, from Russia. And I let them know that. We put a very big tariff on India, 50% tariff, very high tariff.
And are you ready to reset relations with India at this point?
I always will. I'll always be friends with Modi. He's great. Prime Minister, he's great. I'll always be friends, but I just don't like what he's doing at this particular moment. But India and the United States have a special relationship. There's nothing to worry about. We just have moments on occasion.
South Korea has launched an urgent response after hundreds of its citizens were detained at a Hyundai battery plant in Georgia, the largest immigration raid at a single site in U.S. history. Video shows rows of workers, mostly South Koreans, handcuffed and led onto buses as ICE agents shut down the facility. Seoul has set up a special task force, and officials say diplomats may travel to Washington to negotiate their release. The White House defended the operation as enforcing immigration law. The raid comes amid sensitive trade talks, raising concerns over its impact on U.S.-South Korea relations. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba has decided to resign in order to avert a split within the ruling Liberal Democratic Party. The move is described as an effort to preserve the party's unity during a very tense period for the country. During Yeshiva's tenure, the coalition led by the LDP lost its majority in both houses of parliament after last year's elections due to public dissatisfaction with rising living costs and overall economic pressure. Lawmakers from the LDP are set to hold an extraordinary vote to elect a new leadership as early as Monday. Now to the Middle East. Israeli forces have ordered residents of Gaza City to evacuate as troops press deeper into the city. The Israel Defense Forces say civilians should head to Al Mawasi, a designated humanitarian zone in the southern city of Khan Yunis. And even tough Israel has issued these orders, many residents say they have nowhere safe to go.
Israeli forces continue operations in Gaza City after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered the capture of the city, calling it a Hamas stronghold that must fall to defeat the militants. But the operation threatens to displace hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, many of whom had already fled earlier in the war.
In regard to the leaflets that were dropped, they want us to displace. Why would we do that? There are bombardments everywhere. We cannot leave. That's it. We will die here. We are not leaving. We are tired.
Others say they have moved from city to city throughout the conflict, only to face the same destruction.
We were displaced before to the south. There were also martyrs there and bombardment. It is all the same. All displacement is for nothing. It is enough.
As the offensive intensifies, mourning and anger are mounting.
I want this message to reach the White House, the Americans who send their weapons to kill the children and women. Fear God in Gaza. We are tired from burying our loved ones every day. Where are you people? Arabs? Americans? Don't you have children? Our children are being killed and exterminated. We are being exterminated.
The Israeli military says tens of thousands of reservists have been called up to support the operation as troops push deeper into Gaza City.
And in Israel, the voices of defiance are growing louder in both Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Thousands of protesters, many of them family members of hostages, are demanding the government act to bring their loved ones home. They are calling for an end to the war in Gaza and accusing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of ignoring their pleas.
Thousands of Israelis came with flags, banners and photographs of their missing. Voices united in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, demanding the return of the hostages and an end to the war. They march outside the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's residence, calling for a ceasefire.
I think he doesn't realize that 80% of the citizens of Israel want a ceasefire and the return of all the hostages, and perhaps demonstrating today at his residence will make him realize, will make him see. I think it's criminal that we are still have 48 hostages, 20 of them hopefully still alive, and they must be brought home right away. And the government needs to resign. Get the hostages home and resign.
In Tel Aviv, the protest turned symbolic. Demonstrators shackled themselves, their mouths sealed shut, echoing the silence of those still captive in Gaza.
There is an obligation of this country who sacrificed their citizens on October 7th and Netanyahu's Holocaust to bring them back to their home, the alive and the dead to be at their home.
Among the most emotional moments, hostage families speaking out.
I want to see Alon. I want to hug him, just as this picture. I want to hug him again to make sure that he's safe in my arms, that he's safe in this country. And I miss him. I miss him. I just want to see him.
With ceasefire talks stalled for months, desperation continues to spill onto the streets. Officials estimate only 20 hostages remain alive, with protesters urging the government to act, warning that every day of deadlock is a day too long.
A UN report has raised serious concerns over widespread human rights violations in the Democratic Republic of the Congo's Kivu provinces. The findings point to crimes by both the DRC and Rwandan forces, including attacks on civilians and the use of child soldiers.
The UN Human Rights Office has released a detailed report on the conflict in North and South Kivu provinces of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The findings cover January to July this year, documenting the takeover of Goma and other cities by the M23 rebel group, backed by Rwandan forces. Investigators say civilians endured daily violations across the region with systematic intimidation, summary executions, and torture. The report highlights hundreds of children detained and forcibly recruited by M23, alongside widespread sexual violence. UN investigators also found that Congolese armed forces and allied groups committed serious abuses, including the deliberate killing of civilians, mass rapes, and looting during their retreat earlier this year. Armed groups allied to the army were also found to have recruited children under the age of 15.
The report finds that both DRC and Rwanda bear responsibility for their support to armed groups with known track records of serious abuses, and for failing to meet their obligations to take all measures to ensure respect for international humanitarian law and to protect civilians from harm.
UN officials are calling for independent investigations, accountability for perpetrators, and support for victims, stressing that the June peace agreement between Kinshasa and Kigali leaves these issues largely unaddressed.
A new stage is beginning in Turkish-Armenian relations as early next week the two countries plan their first ever delegation-level talks. The Turkish side will be led by Ambassador Serdar Kilic, who is expected to cross into Armenia through the Alijan border. The agenda will focus on long-discussed but still unimplemented measures, including cargo transport, air flights, and easing border procedures. Analysts say the meeting carries added weight coming soon after the US-Armenia-Azerbaijan agreement on the Zangezur corridor, a deal that could reshape regional connectivity. Georgia's ruling party, Georgian Dream, led by Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze, has invited OSCE observers to monitor the October 4th local elections. The government had argued earlier that inviting observers was unnecessary and would burden the mission. Kobakidze said the decision came as two opposition parties nominated candidates in most districts, creating a competitive race. The move aims to ensure transparency and credibility, with the OSCE mission now expected to observe the vote. Prisons are turning to books as a path to rehabilitation in Uzbekistan. A new law gives inmates the chance to shorten their sentences by reading, with the aim of building knowledge, values, and a stronger chance of reintegration into society. Our Sevil Rajapova has more.
In Uzbekistan, a new law has been approved that gives prisoners the chance to reduce their prison terms by reading books. The initiative, supported by the Senate, aims to help inmates develop strong moral and spiritual values while encouraging education and rehabilitation. The law introduces Article 74(1) of the Criminal Code, which allows inmates to reduce their sentence by 3 days for each book they complete from an approved list. The reduction can total up to 30 days per year. The reading program will be available to about 13,500 prisoners out of 43,000 currently serving sentences, though it does not apply to those with life terms. A special commission, including prison staff, educators, psychologists, and public representatives, will evaluate whether inmates have properly studied the books. Courts will then make the final decision on applying the sentence reduction. According to officials, prison libraries already hold more than 214,000 titles in Uzbek, Russian, English, and even Braille. Popular works among inmates include novels by Uzbek authors such as Tugay Murad and Notkir Hashimov, as well as classics by Dostoevsky. Authorities hope that this program will strengthen rehabilitation and help offenders return to society with a renewed outlook on life.
Uzbekistan's President Shavkat Mirziyoyev held a phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump, focusing on trade, business cooperation and joint efforts against terrorism and extremism. Mirziyoyev invited Trump to pay an official visit to Tashkent at a convenient time. Both sides underlined upcoming meetings with U.S. companies aimed at building long-term partnerships. The leaders also discussed regional cooperation in the C5+1 format and agreed to maintain high-level contacts to advance joint projects. In Afghanistan, powerful earthquakes and aftershocks have devastated the northeast of the country. More than 2,000 people are confirmed dead, thousands more injured, and survivors are left without homes or basic supplies. Aid agencies warn the response has been slow.
In the wake of a devastating earthquake, families in Afghanistan's northeastern Kunar province have lost their homes and possessions as two powerful aftershocks continued to shake the region. The two strong aftershocks struck eastern Afghanistan 12 hours apart, raising fears of further deaths and destruction. The region has already seen around 2,200 people killed, with rescuers battling mountainous terrain and harsh weather conditions.
The government brought us here because rocks are still falling and there are still earthquakes. The whole country is shaking. This morning there was another strong quake and rocks rolled down. We cannot spend our time there. We are forced to stay here because we have no house and cannot live in the rain. During this disaster, many people were martyred, and that night it rained on them. There were 65 bodies. We dug a trench and placed 45 of them inside. For the rest, we cleared out old graves and buried them there.
Entire households were buried under rubble, leaving survivors with little more than the clothes on their backs. Children are reported to be traumatized by the ongoing tremors.
We have no shelter, no tent, no mattress and no carpet. There is no water. People bring us hot water, but apart from that, there is nothing. We need cash assistance because all our belongings and property were buried under the rubble. We came from our area with only one set of clothes.
Don't even ask about the fear. If a car passes by here, the children get scared and start crying. I carry this one in my arms all day long. Even a slight shake makes them afraid.
The first quake, of magnitude 6, struck just before midnight on Sunday at a shallow depth of 10 kilometres. It caused widespread damage in Nangarhar and Kunar provinces. A second earthquake, magnitude 5.5, hit on Tuesday, causing landslides and blocking roads to remote villages, interrupting rescue operations. Survivors are struggling for basic necessities, while the United Nations and other agencies warn of a critical need for funds, food, medical supplies and shelter. The World Health Organization is seeking $4 million to respond. Turkish Red Crescent vehicles have been seen in Kunar, but overall aid response has been slow. The Taliban administration reported 2,205 deaths and 3,640 injuries as of Thursday, September 4th.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for joining us and stay tuned to A News for more updates.